another edition of Lee's Feed. And I have the pleasure of having an old friend of mine, Mr. Larry Ivory, who's the president of the Illinois State Black Chamber. And today we're going to talk about procurement opportunities for African Americans in the state of Illinois. And Mr. Ivory is well versed in this topic. So let's have at it, Mr. Ivory. First and foremost, we're going to always do this. What is the Illinois State Black Chamber?
Lee, the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce is a Black trade organization who focuses on how to strengthen Black businesses because we believe in strengthening Black businesses. You strengthen Black communities, Black people, and you strengthen Black America. So our major objective is to help grow Black businesses to a number of different processes that we have in place.
How long have you been in existence, Larry?
Well, Lee, we've been in existence for over 20-something years now. And let me just tell you our mission statement, because it's important. Our mission statement is to economically empower and sustain the African American community through entrepreneurship and capitalistic activity via interaction with our National Black Chamber of Commerce throughout the Black diaspora is the objectives. And how do we do that? We do it a targeted approach in our standing committees. And we have 11 standing committees that are designed to focus on specific areas of interest like sports and entertainment, healthcare, energy, construction, and a host of other areas. So that's our mission. And that's what every morning we get up, that's what we do.
Okay, that's great. And you are also the chairman of the National Black Chamber.
Yes, I am chairman of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. This is my second year as chairman. Well, and I was chairman before that. So this is my second. I guess I'm the only person in the Chamber Federation who's been chairman twice in the organization.
You served 2 terms, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. So Larry, with social justice and all the stuff that that's going on in this country today, with reference to more opportunities. In this particular instance, we're going to talk about African Americans, not Hispanics, not women, not transgender or LGBT. We're talking primarily about African Americans, right?
Correct.
Okay. So do you think the state of Illinois is doing its fair share with reference to opening up opportunities for African Americans?
No, Lee, I don't think the state has lived up to anywhere close to what it should be doing when we take a look at the hard data, because the data will point out that African Americans are still, participating at a significantly lower level number than other ethnic groups and other Caucasian groups and white female groups, quite frankly.
So what has the state done? You've been a part of some things in your tenure as the president of the Illinois State Black Chamber. So you guys helped push some major legislation that was passed, I think, in 2019. Let's talk about that. What was the name of that particular legislation?
It was the sheltered market. It was an executive order that was put in place by the past governor, Governor Rauner, and it was legislation that dealt with the law. I mean, it's, basically it was an enforcement of a law that already existed, and they simply put some teeth into it.
Okay, so what exactly does that mean? What does the shelter market do?
Well, the sheltered market, Lee, is one of the most powerful procurement laws on the books that has been underutilized, just like our business been underutilized. The law has been underutilized also. And what we mean by that is that the shelter market says, look, at every BEP council meeting, which is a business enterprise council, that we should set aside time to hear examples of discrimination. And after listening carefully, if we find that discrimination does exist, the law says we shall add on to the existing sheltered market, which means if you got one and you still showing discrimination, they want you to take more aggressive actions. Or number two, it says if you don't have one, you shall establish the sheltered market to correct the discrimination. Now, and I emphasize it says you shall, it didn't say you may, you could, you can consider. It says once finding discrimination, you shall establish a sheltered market to correct the discrimination. And it can be negotiated and non-negotiated bids. So that's the law.
But let me break it down so the average layman can understand. So you're saying that out of all the procurements that take place in the state of Illinois, whether it's construction, professional services, or whatever, if someone is looking at the numbers and seeing who the state is purchasing goods and services from, if they determine that there's a disparity in any of those areas, you must put in place a sheltered market.
That's what the law said.
Right? Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so now the shelter market would do what? Here I am, say for instance, I am a advertisement agent. And Illinois has been basically discriminating against my people who are in the advertisement arena. Most of those contracts are going to majority firms. What happens?
Well, what happens once they got the data, and the data becomes important, like we say, in God we trust, but everybody else bring your data. The data tells us about availability and utilization. Okay, so if we take a look at the numbers and say, for example, we got a lot of firms in that particular next code in advertising. But when we take a look at—
What do you mean? Let's stop there. What do you mean by a lot? Does it have to be a percentage of all the ad agencies that are vying for bids, or because we wouldn't have a great number? So is that willing and able companies, does that number have to reach a percentage of the whole?
No, it doesn't. In order to establish a goal, you got to have at least 3 companies in the same area.
Okay.
As a rule of thumb. But in most cases in advertising, you have more than enough. Just like IT, you got hundreds, you got lots of black IT firms out there, but they may not be doing much business with the state of Illinois. So availability is the basis by which the firms who are available and those who are being utilized creates kind of the difference. And what you'll see in most cases is that you may have 15% of the companies who may be black, but you only got 1% participation. That is underutilization. And therefore that is discrimination, whether intentionally or unintentionally, doesn't matter. Simply the law states that if you can show discrimination, you shall establish a sheltered market to correct the discrimination.
Okay, is the sheltered market, quote unquote, is that another name for a set aside?
I think you can, I think I think I much rather call it another name for corrective remedies to the problem, okay? Set asides, as we know, always have a negative connotation to it, which deals with—
But why is that? I mean, sometimes we're gonna have to get away from things that appear to be negative, but the law allows for it. Under the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, it says that you can establish quotas or set asides, just like in the shelter market, if you see an area where there's discrimination. One group is underutilized and one group is overutilized. So we shouldn't run from that term because that's what it is. They're saying that if you're not going to let us participate, then we're going to set aside an area of work exclusively for that underutilized group. Am I right?
That's correct, Mr. Coleman. You're right.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, let's use it. It's in the language in the federal laws under the CFR, and here now we're talking about the state. And sometimes when state agencies get funding from federal agencies, which they do a lot of times, then the state agency is inclined to follow the guidelines of the federal program. So the CFR is the feds, and they infuse the state with federal dollars. So that's under Title VI. So it's okay to call it a set aside or a quota because guess what? You're underutilizing a class of people. Like you said, the key word is intentionally or unintentionally. That's so important.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Because it's hard to try in the court uh, what someone intentionally did and what someone unintentionally did. And if you use that as a basis, you can find a lot of gray area. But it doesn't matter whether it was intentionally or unintentional. What it says is here's what the numbers say. That's it.
Okay, so the shelter market existed some time ago, and the chamber, under your leadership, discovered that there was a disparity in different groups of purchases and procurement. So what did you do when you found that out? Because you are on the BEP Council. So who did you go to make the existing executive order do what it's supposed to do, perform?
Well, the first thing I got to give credit to the person who hit me to it, and that was Charlotte Roberts, because I hadn't heard of the shelter market. I didn't know it even existed. She pointed it out. At that time, she was working for CMS as the head of strategic sourcing, but she couldn't take on that fight like I could. And so once I understood it and I was educated on it, then it was my job as an advocate to go and fight for it, to make sure that we were abiding by the law. So we went to work. We had for 2 years, we fought, with people internally who did not want to do the sheltered market. They did not want to correct anything that was wrong. And they made every excuse that they could have made by which to do it. But I can tell you, you had a lot of people engaged on the BEP Council, because when we voted for it, it was a unanimous vote. And that included everybody, from white women to Hispanics to Blacks. We all voted for it. We were one of the strongest voices when it came to advocating for the sheltered market. But it was essential to us that we had to make sure that the shelter market came alive. We then went to the governor at that time, Rauner, and I told him, I said, look, he asked me what he could do. I said, look, I need you to enforce the law. And I gave him some information. He did some homework, and he came back and said, look, he came back with an executive order. And that executive order basically let heads of agencies and everyone else know that, the sheltered market was here and that they were going to take advantage of moving the sheltered market forward. So the first sheltered market that was declared was in IT. The second sheltered market that was declared was in advertising. But the interesting thing, Lee, is that even though we declared the sheltered market and the council voted on it maybe 5 to 6 years ago, we've only done 2 sheltered markets in IT, and we haven't done any sheltered markets in advertising.
Let me ask you a question. So when it starts, when you get, I'm gonna call it a set aside. When you start to set aside because of disparities, when does it stop?
And it stops when there is parity, when discrimination no longer exists. So until discrimination is no longer in existence, and the only way you're going to find that out is when Black people and those people who were part of that sheltered market find some degree of parity. If that doesn't happen, then you can continue to use the sheltered market to correct the discrimination. And as I tell people, one contract in IT doesn't correct discrimination in IT. It only takes us in the right direction, but it does not take us to the touchdown, to the goal post.
So it's my understanding that the shelter market was created before Governor Rauner, but it was enforced.
Oh yeah, it was. I think the sheltered market has been around on the books. It's the Bible of procurement, and it's been around for 15 years.
15 years. Okay, it's been on the book for 15 years, and no governor has saw fit in 15 years to sign an executive order to make happen what should have happened 15 years ago. And Rauner did that.
Yeah, Rauner did do that.
Rauner did that. And he happened to be a Republican, but he did it. Facts are facts. So the chamber should get credit for actually pushing that agenda. And just because you sit down with a guy from a political party that is not, very popular in Illinois at this time, What's wrong with that? Because your job is to do things to make things better for who? The African American community.
Yeah.
Why do you
Well,
get criticized for that?
well, I think that the problem, Lee, that exists within our community, especially on the political side, is that we have become so toxic that people stop, they don't understand, fail to understand, I don't want to understand that, my role is that my job is to help Black businesses. When I help Black businesses, I help Black communities and Black people. And so whether a Democrat is in office or Republicans in office, my job is to try to get as much done on behalf of Black business as I can. So it means I got to work with anyone in the office. It would be ridiculous when you think about it, just because some other party wins, that we decide that we're not going to talk to them. We're going to sit for 4 years and get nothing. And we're going to be anti them because just because they're not from the same party, or they're not from the party that some people think they ought to be. So I think it's ridiculous. It's quite frankly, it's kind of petty, to be honest with you.
No,
In terms
it's detrimental
of,
because right now we have a president who has 50 votes in the Senate, and he's busting his butt to get bipartisan bills passed. And everybody think if it's bipartisan, it's good. So it's okay for the president to do that. There's a point in time where he's going to cut and run and to rely on his majority in the Senate with the vice president breaking a tie. But there's nothing wrong with working across the aisle to get something done, especially if that person across the aisle understands what you're trying to push and gets it done. What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's the political evolution of Black political thinking. I think sometimes have allowed us to stay where we're at, and I believe that it is fundamentally important, in my opinion, and it's my job, as a president of the chamber, to work with anyone and everyone in a position of authority that control procurement, to make sure that I've done everything in my power to give my people an opportunity to do business. And the wealth gap in America is so significant in the Black community. And we know the real way that we're going to resolve the wealth gap isn't through more social services. It's going to be resolved through more business growth and development. So we got to understand that, and we got to appreciate that. And it doesn't mean that all my friends on the other party are, I'm anti them, or just because I work with another party means that I'm all pro them. It's like people. There's some good people and some bad people.
Why did you get flack from? I'm just gonna call it like I see it, from members of the Black Caucus. Why did you get flack from them on such a good job that the chamber did to actually get a Republican governor, when he knows that most Blacks are in the Democratic Party? But you got a Republican governor to do something that will fundamentally help more Blacks than anybody. Why would not the members of the caucus applaud that? Let's call it
well, you got to ask the Black Caucus, because I'm a little puzzled at it, Lee. I think it's just party politics, man. At the end of the day, it's about
your own people.
Well, the question is
just a rhetorical question. I don't understand that. And it's time, and I'm saying that this is Lee Coleman from Southern Illinois, former IDOT employee. I know a lot of the Black Caucus members. Larry Ivory's been my friend for 20 some odd years, unfortunately. But I'm saying we have to go get it. And if those guys in the caucus are not doing things that's in the best interest of their constituents, that's absolutely wrong. And I think it's going to be times in the very near future that they need to be called out, whomever they are. In fact, the governor, when we met with him in May of 2019, that's what he suggested. I was in the meeting with you.
Yeah.
He said that those agencies and those individuals who are not on board with making people, making opportunities fair for everybody, he said they should be called out. So there's going to come a time when I know I'm going to do it. They need to be called out, whomever they are, because you can't sell your soul to the political party from traditional points of view for the sake of being in with the crowd. You got to make them produce for your people. That's what you're there for, representing your people by all means necessary.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what is, at the end of the day, Lee, Black people are suffering. And like Dr. King said, of the good things in life, the Black man has a small portion. Of the bad things in life, he has a double portion. When it comes to high crime, when it comes to lack of education, we lead the pack. When it comes to the good things like wealth and education, we're underperforming by a significant margin. It's our obligation, I believe our obligation for our kids, for the next generation behind us, to stand and be not afraid. I'm glad Dr. King wasn't afraid to stand up and fight for accommodation, to fight for economic parity. If he had not have fought for it, I think we would be farther behind. I don't think he would be happy where we're at right now, because I think he would have thought where he ended and where we were taking it, that we were going to move much farther down the line. So I believe it's an obligation for us to understand that we have to make some sacrifices. And it was not always going to be the most popular thing to do. Sometimes it's not popular to do certain things, but sometimes you got to do what's best for the people that you represent. And in my opinion,
How hard is that? How hard is that?
It's obviously hard.
How hard is that?
Well, I would believe that most caucus people believe, Lee, that they're doing everything for their people. And there's a difference, and you could debate that, and they surely would probably debate that with you. I'm not saying every Black caucus member isn't, but there's some who I believe don't always, in my honest opinion, look at all the legislation, make sure how it impacts their own constituency, quite frankly. So there's room for growth there, just like there's room for growth everywhere. And they're no exception to that rule.
But right now is the optimum time for stepping up the game with the president announcing what he did the other day about helping build, equity in a lot of aspects of economics, housing, more loans to businesses, the federal government patronizing more businesses. So we should be doing on the state level also.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was a proud moment when the president acknowledged Tulsa and the tragedy of Tulsa, which has never been spoken at the same level he spoke to it in terms of the tragedy. For the first time, people are recognizing how devastating that was, and the model that it created. Just think of the consequences of that, man. That's pretty significant.
This is time for all Black people to get on board and support their people. It's time, because we talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma on my TV station back in the 90s. I visited Greenwood. I visited the shrine, the museum. But here's something that we have to get away from, because it's like mob mentality to a certain degree. It's almost like a cult. No, we really heaped all of our hopes and dreams on President Obama. He was there for 8 damn years, and he never acknowledged what happened in Tulsa. It's going to take Joe Biden, who was against busing, to acknowledge what happened to Black people 100 years ago. Joe Biden. Barack Obama, when we were in Georgia at Morehouse, every president traditionally had addressed their graduating class. The year that I was there, some of the administrators told us that Barack Obama had not done that. So let's just start calling it like it is. That's what we're going to have to do. He was wrong for doing that. He was wrong for not pardoning Jack Johnson. He was wrong for not pardoning the Black female who went to jail for an inordinate amount of time for a non-violent drug offense, and he let Trump pardon the lady. Okay? So we don't want you in office as a trophy African-American political person. We want you there to do the job. And we just love Obama.
Well, hey, Lee, I can only say to you that
This is not something to you. This is what I'm saying. We've got to, let's call it like it. You've been out there slaving and laboring all the years in the chamber. You get criticized because you work with a Republican governor to bring out of the grave a law that had not been practiced for years, and you put it back on the table. But we got to get this message to Black people. We got to get it to these people's constituency. Let them know that, a lawyer is out there representing you. He's not representing himself. He's got to get you off whatever charges you are charged with. And that's the same thing for our representatives. They're not there to get political perks for themselves. They're there to represent their constituency, and their constituency should hold them accountable.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like I said, I think there is some room for some real self-evaluation and then action, because the fact, like you and I have often talked about, we can talk all day, but it's going to take action. We have to be intentional about fighting for what we deserve. I watch every time I watch the Olympics, and I watch Black people put the flag on their back and march and proud of America. And we've done it, every Olympics, and I doubt that America would ever be the number one gold medalist. I mean, the most medals of any other country, in most cases, than the United States. That could not happen without us. It's like America could not be America if it wasn't for 4 million Black slaves working for free. 4 million Black people.
What about the world? The whole world? The economy of the world is built on the backs of African slaves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And no one's talking about reparations. No one wants to. Matter of fact, they want to take more from us, and then, instead of, understanding. It's like, if you do something wrong to people, I think it's essential for your own spiritual growth to correct whatever you've done wrong. If I hurt you, and if I know it, and it's normally going to bother me to a point that I need to do something about it, I'm not sure that our counterparts even feel that way whatsoever. But it doesn't matter how they feel. What really matters is what we're going to do at the end of the day. And I believe that it's our obligation, our moral obligation, to stand up and fight for what's right. And I don't care, the Black caucus, the white caucus, or whatever caucus you may call it, the Italian caucus, the Hispanic caucus. I think it's incumbent upon us, man, to challenge status quo, to try to move the agenda forward with Black people. And like I said, we got some people out there who, within our own systems, that don't always feel good about us. But there was a time where the Black Chamber of Commerce was a essential part of what happened on the business side. And a lot of decisions that people make, like they're talking to Illinois Department of Transportation and trying to get something done on behalf of Black people. Well, if you or I ain't sitting at the table, they don't have the best people, because there's very few people who know more about Illinois Department of Transportation of rules and regulation than we do. And it's like anything else, if you're trying to win the NBA championship and you got Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and LeBron James, and they all of them are in their prime, and you don't put them in the game, you're not trying to win the championship. So if you're not putting the best people on the court, then I got to ask myself the question, are you serious about winning? And in most cases, I don't think they're serious about winning on behalf of Black people.
Here's the deal. How serious are we in terms, I'm talking you and I and our team, which I'm a part of the chamber. When did we get serious enough to make them hear what we're saying? You've reached out to the governor. You've reached out to Omar Osmond, who's got confirmed recently to be the transportation secretary. They won't meet with you. So what are we going to do and let's put the Shelton market on the table. Let's put Charlotte Roberts on the table. What are we going to do as a community when they keep shooting down everything that's going to advance us, even to having a meeting? You're the most relevant, in my opinion, the oldest business organization in the state of Illinois, to my knowledge. You've been influential in a lot of different things in the state when it comes to Black businesses, not Hispanic businesses, not women-owned businesses, but Black businesses. Not ashamed to say that. Hispanics are not ashamed to say we're Hispanics. They don't say people of color. They say Hispanics. When women go to the table, they don't say people of color. They say women. So here we are trying to make sure that we everything goes down easy. We walk in the door with everybody else. We mention everybody else, but we're the one that's suffering the most. So what are we going to do as a group to make sure that Omar Osman meets with you, that the governor meets with you, that the shelter market does what it's supposed to do? What are the action items on your table or in your mind that we should deploy to get that recognition, not for us, but for our people?
Well, I think, Lee, the first thing we got to do is what we're doing. We got to understand social media. We got to understand the power of social media and how things work, and make sure that that we give people action steps to take. It's like, people should go to the BEP Council meeting to hear how things are being run, and whether they're restricting our opportunity to pass the sheltered market, because people need to see it. Mm-hmm. Unless you see it, you won't appreciate it. Unless you, like I said, you can't, someone can talk about being in love, but until you got your heart broken, you don't understand love. There's certain things that you got to see for yourself. And then we got to call for action, and we got to make sure that people know where people are at. And then when you give people information, we build a strong social media platform and take all the talent that we have in Black media, social media. That's why I'm proud to be on Lee's feed, because Lee gives us an opportunity for us to have this conversation and to get this conversation over to thousands and thousands of people.
Okay, Larry. Larry, I didn't mean to cut you out, but I want to just show the people. Here's the shelter market report. Here is the executive summary. So we're not just talking about something that's not there. This exists.
I don't see it on the screen, Lee.
You don't see it? Okay, let me see something here. Hold on for a second. Let me do this. Tell you what, Larry, we'll edit that in, Larry. We'll show it.
Okay, great.
We'll edit that in. We'll put it out there. But we just want the people to see that there is a document that exists.
Yeah, and really, Lee, I would say to our people that the law is on our side. The law has clearly been put in place to help remedy some of the problems and challenges. But conveniently, they enforce some laws and they simply disregard other laws. The laws that impact us, they disregard. If we break the law, they want to beat us upside the head and put us in jail. What do we do when they break their own laws? And what is the impact of that? And what we have to see, the correlation between economics and social problems and issues are enormous.
They go together, don't they?
It ties together. You and I talk about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you ain't got no money, no resources, to think, if anyone was Bill Gates and they had $75 billion or some enormous amount of money, how many other problems in the Black community would be resolved? You can resolve virtually all the problems, but our problem is we don't have the resources, and we don't get the resources because we're not participating economically in procurement. We're paying tax. There's no discrimination when it comes to taxes. The state, the federal government, if you owe taxes, they come to get it, and they're going to try locally. If you don't pay it, they're going to be all over you. But when it comes to our participation, it seems like it's unimportant. And quite frankly, it's a little offensive, from my perspective. I'm coming from an investment banking background. I'm a little angry at the fact that I pay, I pay a significant amount of taxes. They take out of my paycheck. Okay.
Paying at a higher rate than the corporate guys that Trump passed the big tax break for, right? I think they're
Oh,
at
absolutely.
we're at
Yeah.
39. But Larry, in closing, so what are three of the action items that you're going to deploy in the most recent in the near future to rectify
Okay.
this problem?
Here's the three things that we want to do. Number one, I think it's the 26th of this month, we have a BEP council meeting. We want everybody to join the BEP council meeting and listen in to the BEP council meeting.
WebEx?
WebEx. Okay. We'll get it to everybody. Okay. Number two, you got to call your legislators and ask them, what do they know about the sheltered market, and ask them to get on the BEP council meeting also so they can hear and see what's going on and listen very carefully. Are we giving time for to talk about discrimination on the agenda? Are we simply so busy doing everything else that we don't make any time for it? And most of the time, we're not making time for it. And if we ain't making time for it, then that's the reason it's not moving forward. But they got to see that for themselves. I can say it all day, but if you come and you listen, you hear what we do, you'll see for yourself that we're not allowing enough time to get that done. We moved from having meetings on a monthly basis to having meetings on a quarterly basis. Now, keep in mind, if you do it on a quarterly basis and you're supposed to be setting aside time to hear areas of discrimination, that means you're only going to listen to it once a quarter. And then if you got a jam-packed agenda on top of it, that means that you're not going to have any of that on their schedule. So nothing's going to happen. They will continue to kick the can. We cannot afford to have them kicking the can down the road for another 5 and 6 years, where innocent people die in the streets because of the lack of economic participation. That can't be on our watch.
Absolutely. What about Charlotte Roberts? What are we going to do about Charlotte Roberts? Talk a little bit about what they did with Charlotte and what should we do about it as a community?
Well, I think, first of all, Charlotte Roberts was one of the most knowledgeable people on the council. She never missed a meeting, not one. And they decided in their non-infinite wisdom to remove Charlotte from the council. She chaired 2 committees on top of it. So you didn't just have someone who never missed a meeting. She was the chair of 2 committees of certification and compliance. Compliance deals with holding people accountable to the rules and regulation. Charlotte knew it because her background was in the area of strategic sourcing with CMS. She worked in Cook County. She's working at the head of diversity for University of Illinois. So she was extremely knowledgeable. They moved her out and they replaced her with Tracy Sullivan, a white female, who I dare say doesn't know half of what Charlotte knows. Nothing against Tracy. It's just the fact of the matter is that Charlotte was an enormous asset to the whole council, not just Blacks, but to everybody. But when you take an asset like that off the table, you cannot perform at the highest level. And so the attack on Charlotte, and I believe it was an attack.
It's got to be. It's got to be.
It was an attack on every Black person and every Black business in the state of Illinois. And if people don't understand that, because as soon as you get people in place that's fighting for us, if they neutralize us, if every time you in the championship basketball game and you got Tony Dorsett in the backfield and you take him out and hurt him, then your running game is going to be slowed down. If you take Michael Jordan off the court, your ability to score and to win the championship is going to be minimized. There are some people who are just that critical, Lee. Mm-hmm. And if we don't stop finding excuses, and someone said, well, did she do something? Well, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that she had been there doing a great job, had not missed a meeting, chaired the committees, was the most knowledgeable and fighting to push for equity and fairness, and people didn't like that. If you don't do what some people think you ought to do and be quiet and stay in your place and be a good boy or a good girl, then they only want people in a position, in my opinion, that will do what they tell them to do. Well, I'm probably never going to be that type of guy, okay? And we should never be. What made America great is our ability to challenge status quo. The Boston Tea Party was about taxation without representation. I mean, that was Americans exercising their right. the war was about, about taxation. It was about having freedom. Well, guys, we got to fight for what we want. There's no easy solution to it. There's no um, being nice about it all the time, and being, finessing every move you make, and afraid to call people name out, and afraid to speak up when you need to. If the Black Caucus isn't doing something, if the White Caucus, if the governor, if we, anytime we're not doing something, we have a right to challenge the status quo and try to make it better. I believe that's our God-given obligation for the time that God given us on earth, is to make a difference and have an impact. And I believe we ought to exercise that, right, Lee?
Yeah, I think before we go, what do we do as a group to address them not establishing uh, shelter markets for these particular procurements?
I think it's real simple. I think the other side, we have to take a look at suing. We have to look at pursuing a legal lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, in order to fix the problem. If we can't reason with them and talk to them, and we continue to kick the can down the road, and we continue to be devastated by it, we must take legal action to be made whole. The court system is designed to make you whole. If someone has taken something from you, the court system is designed to make you whole and put you back in the state that you should have been in. Well, the state of Black people, they have taken so much from us that we have to stop and fight and make sure that we get the proper representation. We, in the prison system, we take a look at the cannabis area, Lee. I mean, it's a tragedy.
I saw it the other day. It's horrendous.
It's so bad.
Sick.
It's sickening. It's sickening.
One time, 40% of Black men in prison were in prison because of some charge with marijuana, minor and major. Marijuana. And if you go to a marijuana establishment today, even though they had that piece about equity, it never happened. And look, it was making money off.
Yeah, man. It's big time pimping. You can call it what you want to call it. People get mad, and people are already mad at me. Ain't nothing new, but this is big time pimping. That's all you can call it, big time pimping, because they're pimping Black people, and we've allowed it to happen, continues to happen, where we're allowing white firms to get out in front, make all this money, and about time we even get any equity and an opportunity, we're so far behind that it'll take us 10 years to even catch up. We're right now, I would say, legitimately, we're 10 years behind.
Well, let's do this, Larry. We're going to end this. When we meet, let's put it out there. What are we going to do? We talked about attending the BP Council. We talked about a class action suit. Let's put it out there. What are we going to, let's put a call to action to our legislators, our community people, the chamber members. Let's put it out there next week.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to me, I say too, is that we need to write a letter to the director and CC the governor on our displeasure with not moving forward on the sheltered market. We need, like I said, we need to contact our legislators, no matter who they are, Black or white, and say, we want you at the BEP council meetings to listen in, and we want you to become knowledgeable about the sheltered market, so that you have the knowledge on it. That's what we got to do.
We got 3 action items to work on for next time.
Absolutely.
Council attendance, class action suit possibilities, and a letter to the director.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Larry, thank you so much. It's a privilege to have a Black man that I know love Black people, and that's okay to love Black people. And you've done that for so many years. You and I argue and fuss and fight, not about personal things, but only how we can help our people more. That's what we fight about. And because it's not on occasion.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure knowing you.
And we care, and we fundamentally, like I said, our cares are chosen by us, not imposed upon us. We chose to care. We care about the condition of America, and we care about the condition of Black people. And if Black people are treated better, America becomes a better place for everybody.
Absolutely. So we ended on that note, Larry. So
thank you, thank you, Mr. Coleman. It's always a pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Thank you for Lee's Feed. Thank you for being a sponsor of Lee's Feed. And let's keep up the good work. I think we're doing good work.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.